Now, while the US decides on arming the Syrian rebels, anti-aircraft missiles from Gulf states are said to have already made their way to the war zone. The FSA military command says the rebels have received weapons that can, as they say, change the balance of power on the ground. Meantime, 8 people suspected of recruiting jihadist fighters to join the ranks of the Syrian rebels have been arrested in Spain. Let's get more on this from political analyst Ammar Waqqaf joining us now. Ammar, we're hearing reports, hi there Ammar, we're hearing reports that hundreds of Europeans could be fighting alongside the rebels now. Does that come as a surprise to you?
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Well, hello to you again. No, it doesn't come as a surprise. We've seen today a prominent Saudi cleric making a Friday prayer in London. His counterpart or someone of the same credentials was prevented by the UK authorities a few years ago from coming to London and doing the same thing. There are now calls for jihad, and simple Muslims who feel aggrieved by what they see on the screen are flooding to Syria, are deciding to go to Syria to achieve martyrdom or whatever.
And what do these European fighters then bring to the melting pot, the boiling pot, if you like? You mentioned they're kind of jihadist fighters. You mentioned they're people that will really fight to the death. Are they in some ways more dangerous? Do they bring a more radical element?
Well, some of them will come back to the European societies and they will bring certain ideals back. I mean, we've seen already one incident in London where a British soldier was hacked. There was no comparison with a Syrian soldier that was hacked pretty much early on. It's the same mentality, it's the same ideology. The person who doesn't like the policies of the relevant government gets a soldier and has all the ideology in the world to hack him and take out his parts, rip him apart, and nobody sees that this is coming sooner than expected to the European streets, and this is pretty much worrying.
Well, Russia reiterated again, of course, those ongoing worries about arming the Syrian rebels, the worry being that they could easily fall into the hands of extremists. Why do you think that warning that we heard again from Putin appears to be going unheeded by many in the West?
Well, I think the West is not really learning about the consequences of arming people. I mean, we've seen this is by no means, an attempt to end a bloody struggle in Syria. In fact, it's going to do quite the opposite. But I think people have now very much easily accepted, arming certain rebels to get rid of a certain government. But this has been going all along, since the early 80s in Afghanistan or in the mid-80s in the Contras in Nicaragua. But then let's just remember that the United States armed the Mujahideen in Afghanistan to get rid of the Soviet Union. Then they armed the Taliban in Pakistan to get rid of the Mujahideen. Then they had to invade Afghanistan to get rid of the Taliban. And now they're negotiating with the Taliban again. And this cycle will never end because the objectives of arming those people have got nothing to do with the real objectives, which is to get rid of a government that doesn't obey what the West or the United States says.
Now, Moscow's concerned about, too, the possibility now of a political vacuum in Syria if Assad goes, if there is a decision to change the government there. If he does go, who do you think at this stage, it's all pretty fluid, I know, but at this stage, who do you think could fill that power vacuum?
Well, no one, because simply there are a lot of Syrians with disregard to their position of the government, with disregard to their position of the corruption, of the dictatorship, and so on and so forth, have decided to stick with the government as a viable framework. Now, the opposition politicians, their only objective is to get rid of the government, as soon as possible, in any sort of, by any means, in any sort of way or shape, because this is the only way where they can actually be perceived to fill the vacuum. But that will never happen because there will be those people who actually supported the current government and they will take up arms against the next government no matter what happens. So, the cycle is never going to end. The only way forward is to keep the framework of the government running and functioning, just like as it was agreed upon in the G8 summit, and then have the change be done from the inside, smoothly, democratically, and that's the only way where both parties can feel this is a fair and square process where they can reap benefits for the next generations.
Political analyst Ammar Waqqaf, thank you very much for being on the line there. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.